So we're going to go over the syllabus a little bit here, talk through our assignments, and we'll then start doing some note taking and that sort of thing. The next one probably. So here's your syllabus. You can see there at the top. There's all my info. Y'all understand how that works. There's your textbook. It's by Hergenhahn. It's a good textbook, and we will use it. So find one of those wherever you can. I'm not sure which edition we're on now. The last couple of editions are not that different. So if you find one and it's fairly recent, then it'll probably be okay. But you will need it, and I will use it some. Even as we do the lectures, I'll kind of use it. So this class has two objectives, and it's one of the things that's going to make doing it online a little bit interesting for me. The first objective is to do the history and system of psychology, which is to talk about where psychology comes from. And to me, that's pretty interesting, and it's a lot of fun. I like history a lot, and so I like to talk about the history of almost anything. And the history of psychology, I think, is kind of fun. You may not think that, and if you don't, I understand. But that's what we're going to do for the major part of the course. The other purpose of the course is that it serves as our psychology capstone course, which you understand. Every major has a capstone course, and we have a course where we theoretically, because of ridiculous regulations and accreditations and stuff like that, we say, oh, now we can prove to everyone that you actually know something, and it doesn't matter that we've given you grades in all these classes for the last 3.5 or 4 years, but now we're going to have a capstone class where we say, oh yes, we put our stamp of approval on you that you actually know something about psychology. So we do that too. One of the ways we do that is with the assignments that you have, specifically the major research paper. So that's going to be part of that. We'll talk about that in a second. So your assignments for the course are these. You're going to do, first of all, the book review. Now, I'm going to have you do this book review that you may think is a little strange, because you may think these books don't really have anything to do with psychology. They kind of do. All of them do in one way or another. And I think they're all good books, and I think they're books that you would be, you might enjoy reading and you might really like. So I want you to do one of these book reviews. One of the ideas here is to think about how psychology connects us with the rest of the world, and why we would study psychology, and how it shows up in real life. And these are some examples maybe of kind of how that works. So you're going to write a 5-page book review of one of these books. You can find them on Amazon, other places, and buy used copies for real cheap if you want to. Your review needs to be thorough and critical, evaluating content, the quality, and the style of the book. You can do that in whatever format you want to do. You'll be graded on the quality of your evaluation, your writing style, and your ability to convey your ideas in a clear and efficient manner. It's going to be due September 23rd at 5 p.m. It's worth 100 points. Those of you who know me and who've had me before, you understand that I like things to be 100 points, because it's really easy for you and I both to know exactly where you are, because we just average whatever those grades are, and that's where you are. So you're going to do this book review. There's 6 books listed here, and I want you to pick one of these 6. The first one is called Take This Bread by Sarah Miles. Sarah Miles is an interesting person. She is a person who was a chef. She was a journalist for a while. She comes from a interesting family background. Her parents were kind of atheistic, but her grandparents were missionaries, I think, in ministry. She is a lesbian person with a partner and a daughter. She came to a realization of her faith through communion, which is a really interesting process. At least I thought it was. And she's an interesting person. And she's one of those people, if you're a Christian person, she might be the kind of Christian person that you haven't ever really met before. She has an interesting story with a lot of psychological stuff in it. So I love the book, and so I think it's absolutely worth you reading. The second one's called Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert, about how we think about what makes us happy and what doesn't. The Narcissism Epidemic by Twing and Campbell is about people who are in the kind of basically the generation that most of you are in, if you're traditional college age, and how people my age mostly and people that are your parents' age kind of developed this generation of people who kind of feel entitled and privileged and special. And I think the Narcissism Epidemic is a really important book for you to read, especially if you're 20-year-old, 21-year-old person. You're kind of probably in that group, and you'll probably see, if you read this, some characteristics of the people that you know, some of your friends, maybe some of you. Hurry Down Sunshine is about a family dealing with mental illness and how hard that is and all the difficulties that come with that. Why We Make Mistakes by Holloman, as you can see, is about that. It's about faults in our thinking and behavior and all those sorts of things. The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt is maybe the hardest book to read out of all these. It's longer, it's a little deeper, but it's really good. Haidt's basic premise is how is it that you can have really smart, educated people who believe one thing and really smart, educated people who believe the opposite of that? How does that happen? If we're all really smart and educated, how do we come to these really different conclusions? And what makes us think that we're right about those things? I think it's a really interesting book, and so if you tackle that one, I'll be honest with you, it's a little tougher and it's a little longer, and that maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe that means none of you will read it, but I hope some of you will, because it's a good book. So those are the books. You're going to write a 5-page review on one of those books. Okay. Let's skip the thing that says project there, and let's go to portfolio, and then we'll come and discussion board, and then we'll come back. The portfolio is going to be a digital portfolio that you put together that's going to contain some things that would allow you then to use it for applying for a job or applying to graduate school. And we'll talk along the way about exactly what goes into that portfolio and exactly what it's going to look like and how you get graded on it. It's an easy way for you to make a good grade if you do it well. Most of it is about pulling together things that you've already done, and a few new things are going to go in there. So I'll talk you through exactly what the portfolio is as we get close to it. You can see it's due the last week of class, so you've got the whole semester to pull that stuff together, and we'll discuss it as we go. The next thing on there is a discussion board. Most of the weeks, probably starting next week, I'll post a prompt on the discussion board related to something we're talking about, or maybe it may just be something in psychology that I think is kind of interesting and important. And then you'll respond to that, and your response needs to be about 100 words or so. You need to do that response by Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Okay? Then by Friday at 5 o'clock, you need to post a response to at least 3 of your other people in the class. Your first response, your response is worth 5 points. The 3 peer responses are worth 1 point each. So that'll be 8 points for each discussion forum. We'll do 13 of those. That ends up being 104 points. Which means you got 4 extra points in there to lose, and you can still get 100. So the discussion board will take a little bit of the place of some of the things that we would do in class, hopefully. Then we'll have a midterm exam. That's an essay exam that you'll do online, of course, and submit. And then we'll have a final exam. That's an essay exam that you'll do online and submit. Now, you go back to the top of this page, the project that you'll do. This is the biggest thing that you're going to do in the class. This is a serious, big research paper. Okay. Now, it's not topical. It's got to be about a research question. And we're going to talk a lot about what a research question is. I'll probably do another video that's about nothing but this paper. Okay. But it says an extensive research review addressing a specific quantitative research question in the field. Quantitative meaning it's about something that you would do an experiment on and be able to measure. Okay. Now you're not going to do an experiment. You're just going to write up what the question is and do the background work on the question. Okay. It's going to require a minimum of 25 current research sources. Okay. We'll talk about that later. It's going to result in a paper that's about 20 text pages in length. It'll be absolutely conforming to APA style. This is that paper that you're going to do where it needs to be APA style top to bottom. Okay. We'll talk about how to figure that out as we go, and I'll give you some examples of that. In addition to your paper, you'll turn in to me a PowerPoint presentation that goes along with that. Okay, so your paper will be due, you see there, on 11/28. The PowerPoint will be due at the same time. Okay, the paper's 85 points. Presentation will count 15 points, and I'll give you a rubric about that. They'll show you exactly how that'll be graded. So that's the big assignment. That's the big deal of the class. Okay, it's extensive. It's important. It's a professional style paper. It's probably the most picky paper you've done so far. Okay, we want you to come up with something where you can say, if you apply to a graduate program, look, here's an example of my writing. Here's how I can write well. Here's how I understand how research works. And you're going to be able to have that to submit to graduate school or maybe even to an employer if that's the appropriate thing. Okay, so we have the book review, your project, the portfolio, the discussion board, a midterm exam, and a final exam. And that's how your grade's going to happen. All right. And you can see there, they're all worth 100 points, except that one that gives you 4 little extra points. And that's how we'll get your final grade. Everything needs to be turned in when it's due. Okay, there's no reason to do anything late. If something happens late because of some horrible thing that happened to you, then let me know and I'll try to be as accommodating and compassionate as I can be. But I don't expect you to do anything late. I want you to do everything on time. And if you do that, then we'll be good. Now here's a tentative look at what we're going to discuss. This is the first week, intro, syllabus. We'll talk a little bit about terminology next. And then you can see there we're going to cover these different groups of people, and I'll try to kind of talk through what chapters in the text might be pertinent at that point when we're going through those. So you can see there that'll get us up to the end of November, and I don't think we won't do a lot of note taking in those weeks that you have a midterm, and so that'll give you a little bit of break there. But it's going to be a full class. There's going to be a lot of stuff to listen to, lots of PowerPoints, lots of stuff to read. So I think you'll enjoy it. I always enjoy this class, and I think a lot of people do. It's a good topic. There's a lot of interesting stuff there, and if you care about the field at all, then I think you'll kind of enjoy it. So that's a look at the syllabus. I'll come back and I'll do some stuff specifically about the research paper, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about that. I'll put up the rubric for the research paper and the rubric for the portfolio, and we'll talk about those as we go along. So make sure that you look through that, see if you have any questions, any big issues with any of that stuff, and then if you have those, put them up on the discussion board, and that way I can answer them and everybody can see them. And that way we'll get, we'll make the best use of our communication time. If you have a personal question about just some little thing that you're thinking, maybe just email that to me. But if it's something that might at all apply to other people in the class, please put that up on the discussion board, and we'll talk through it that way. All right. So I'll be back tomorrow, the next day. This is Tuesday that I'm doing this, and I'll get started with giving you some notes to work through.